Welcome to the second episode of the Corner 3 here on Pittsburgh Sports Live in the Beaver County Auto Studios. My name's Cale Berger. Alongside me, Mike Asti. No Alan Saunders today. Little snowy outside.
Little bit, yeah. His daughter has the 2-hour delay, the miraculous 2-hour delay that I'm jealous of. We don't have in our adult life.
I would kill for a 2-hour delay, honestly. Would love it.
Yeah, I know. It would be nice. It would be nice, especially Alan probably cooking her breakfast.
I feel like Alan makes a mean omelet.
I could picture Alan as an omelet guy. Yeah.
Alan,
do you think he makes nice pancakes? How you feel with the Alan pancakes?
Yeah, but I feel like Alan calls them flapjacks.
Alan definitely calls them flapjacks.
Right?
He for sure calls them flapjacks,
Yeah.
and he might even prefer waffles.
Definitely. Well, it's usually the Corner 3, but only a Corner 2 today, and it's kind of funny because we went from the most efficient shot in basketball to probably one of the worst ones, but we're going to try and make it work today.
Well, it's also fitting with one of our topics that we'll get to in a second because one guy is no longer on a team because he didn't take enough corner threes and kept taking twos
That's a very
that he
good
also
point.
would miss. So it actually is very fitting to this particular show.
It's a very good point. So we're going to start off with some NBA talk, and then after that, get to some NCAA, talk about Pitt, talk about Duke and their freshman phenoms, and that's right, plural, phenoms. But we're first going to get started about the big trade that happened this week with Jimmy Butler getting sent from the don't knock over Roddy.
I know
Roddy Piper.
that's bad luck right there. We're gonna lean him so Roddy can still loom over this broadcast.
So Jimmy Butler got traded from the Timberwolves to the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for Robert Covington, Dario Saric, Jared Bayless, and a 2022 second-round pick. I have to say, Mike, I actually really like this trade for both teams. Now, we all knew that Jimmy Butler had to get out of there.
Right. Yeah, he did have to get out of there, or
had
at least he wanted to get out of there.
Yeah, he wanted to go, and I think we all kind of realized that there had to be a change made. It wasn't going to work with him in Minnesota anymore. But I really like this trade for both teams. I think if you're Philly, you get a third star. You get a guy who's going to play defense, can add some toughness to this team. Another scorer as well, which is something that I think they've drastically needed, is a guy to score on the perimeter.
Yeah.
And then if you're the Timberwolves, you add Covington, a 3-and-D guy who is, I think, a really underrated player in the league.
Which any 3-and-D guys in the NBA right now are
you'll
valuable
take
players because
Absolutely.
almost no star is a 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, you absolutely need 3-and-D guys. You can never have too many of them. Dario Saric, who I think is going to be really fun to watch him play alongside Karl-Anthony Towns. You know, those two passing, big-to-big passing, working off each other. They can both stretch the floor with a three-point shot. I think that's gonna be fun, and they get a 2022 second-round pick out of it as well, which, I'm not really sure the protections on that as of yet, but it should be able to help them down the road. So I think it really helps both teams.
It does, and it was a trade that had to happen. You also have to wonder, Derrick Rose's 50-plus point game and his comeback story and that emotional night a few weeks ago, if that led to trigger this or hurry up the trade, because it would at least make the Wolves feel they could be competitive this season with Derrick Rose manning the point and being able to start and get more minutes and get up shots, not having to rely so much on Jimmy Butler. So that trade and that might have been triggered or at least hurried up off of that night. But, I mean, when you're in a situation where a player is vocally telling the national media, I don't want to be there, you're going to have to do it. There's rumblings and reports of not getting along with your franchise player. So, again, you're going to have to do this even though you want to keep a guy like Jimmy Butler. So, with all those situations coming together and it being kind of a difficult problem for the Wolves to solve, I think they got the best they really could out of it. And what you bring up with the Sixers, that's one of the reasons why they got bounced out of the playoffs and why they got kind of humiliated to the Celtics. They didn't have that guy. Yeah. Ben Simmons, the Robin to Joel Embiid's Batman, he can't shoot and when you think about it. I mean, it sounds weird to say for a star in the NBA, but he can't get up shots. His shot is weird. He doesn't have a high efficiency when he actually does get these shots up.
Exactly.
So if he's going to continue to struggle with that, because everyone keeps saying, oh, he's going to figure it out. He's going to figure it out. Well, I haven't seen it yet. So as long as he goes while he's trying to figure it out, Jimmy Butler can mask that, can help him out. You do need a 3-star system usually to win a title and go further. And he can also offer you more defensively than either one of those two offer.
And he's a guy at the end of games who I think you can rely on a little more to get a bucket for you.
Right.
And that's the thing about Ben Simmons and what we saw in the playoffs last year is he can play great for 3 quarters, but when it's crunch time and that defense starts to pack it in, you need to hit jump shots.
You do.
And he's not able to do that, and you really can't have that your center, Joel Embiid, be that guy, although he's shown he can hit perimeter jump shots. So I really like it for the Sixers and for the Timberwolves as well. My only concern, though, is he just got completely fed up with a bunch of young kids because they were playing too much Fortnite.
Yeah, there you go.
Call of Duty.
There you
and
go.
now he's going to another two.
He doesn't like your generation. He doesn't like you, basically.
Hey, and no one likes millennials, I guess. I mean,
yeah, I'm still a millennial too, but he doesn't like the younger millennials. Yeah.
So now he's going to Joel Embiid, a guy who is probably less mature than the other two, although he's probably a better player, and Ben Simmons as well. I mean, is it going to work the second time with a different set of kids, I guess?
This is when this trade was first announced, my initial thought, and I think I even tweeted this, was regardless of how this shakes out, it's going to be incredibly entertaining with the Sixers because it's either going to be amazing and they're going to be a title contender, and if they don't win a championship or get to the finals, they're going to lose a tough 7-game series. It's going to be great watching them. Or it is going to be a train wreck and there's going to be even more drama and there's still going to be fun on the basketball court to watch. So that's a perfect storm for us, for fans and media to experience with the Sixers. But yeah, you're actually, you can make an argument that based on perception, he's going to two guys in Embiid and Simmons who are less mature than Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. I mean, they've got criticized for being mature and having lack of maturity not get them further in the playoffs. And they're a young team that finally experienced the postseason run last year, but the maturity, some argued, was why they got embarrassed in that series to Boston because they don't have necessarily the leadership ability. They don't have the ability to kind of adjust their game for a postseason run. You almost need to treat Embiid like a young Shaq, but if that's how you're going to treat him, you can't worry about him as much defensively. You can't worry about him as much free throw wise late in games. Those are things that Jimmy Butler can figure out, but is he going to have the patience to figure it out? Yeah. Is he going to give you that Kobe Bryant to Shaq where I don't want to wait for you, I'm going to be irritated early on even though we're really good? I don't know if it almost seems like Jimmy Butler has that Kobe Bryant mentality of I am not waiting around.
Well, the other thing, too, is you got to take into account where he came from.
Right.
The guy was homeless. He went to junior college, walked on at Marquette.
Yeah.
Was the 30th pick in the draft. All he has done is work hard and proved himself through his NBA career.
So unlike his teammates at all these stops, when you think about it, Embiid, Simmons, they've had the golden carpet ushered out to them their entire careers.
Every single one of them. And now, and he's got that chip on his shoulder, and that's
which is good.
You won. And it's a lot of the reason why he is where he is. But you know, he clashes with a lot of these guys because that's just how he's wired. And some other guys aren't wired like that because they've been handed. Not to say they haven't worked hard, but they've kind of just been bestowed as the next best thing.
Yeah.
Each and every one of them. It was Wiggins. It was Cat. It was Simmons.
Yeah, there's two of them on the Sixers right now. So I don't know. When you think about it, that is going to be potentially the only hang-up. It would really suck if that happens, though, because they're so young, they're so good, they're hitting their primes. Butler's hungry. That team, you figure, is hungry. Yeah. The time is now for that Sixers team, and they do have legit competition with the Celtics in the East. LeBron is now gone out of the conference. There are the Raptors, etc. They're still going to be competitive, but it feels like it's still Celtics and Sixers, even though the Raptors obviously are winning games and are top of the conference. So this is the time right now, and those teams are going to bring it defensively. They're going to have better overall games with Kyrie and then going to Kyrie Leonard now being on the Raptors. The Sixers are going to need to bring that added dimension to themselves in a postseason series this year they did not have last year. So Butler can bring it, but will egos get in the way? If he tries to take the last shot, will he be upset if, say, that somehow goes to Simmons and he misses it? Is Butler going to force that he has to be the closer, quote-unquote, of these games because he's the best shooter out of those three? Will there then be an argument, even if it's away from Simmons and he's okay with not taking the shot? Does Butler take the shot, or does Embiid try to drive the lane with his size?
Well, this actually is a great transition there. I don't know if you intended to do it.
I'm a veteran. That's what I do here.
But in terms of not deciding who can take the last shot, on Monday there was a big, widely publicized confrontation amongst the Warriors, who we haven't seen a lot of cracks from in the last 5 or 6 years. But basically, Steph's not playing. Draymond Green gets the rebound, last possession of the game, coming down the court, doesn't pass the ball to Kevin Durant, turns the ball over. They end up losing the game. And there's a eruption that ensues between all of the Warriors and Draymond Green, Kevin Durant. Draymond gets suspended. Allegedly, he says to Kevin Durant something along the lines of, leave. We don't need you. We won without you, which...
There might even have been a choice word added in there, I believe. There was a B word.
Yeah, exactly. But we all kind of feel the same thing, that they really didn't need him. But it's really shocking and jarring to hear that they actually said it. And, I mean...
If you're going to pick a guy to say it on the team, though, it would have been Draymond.
I mean, exactly. Yeah, Draymond's the guy who's not going to hold back.
Right.
But it's starting to look like things are starting to crack for the Warriors. And not to say that I think that in terms of their relationship with KD, now they did suspend Draymond for what he said to Kevin Durant. So it does come across as if they value Kevin Durant more than Draymond. I mean, I probably would too. He's Kevin Durant. But we're hearing a lot of rumors about him wanting to get out of there and where he's going to go in free agency. He's going to be a free agent this upcoming summer. And it kind of seems like the Warriors are starting to, I guess, those cracks are starting to show. And I'm not sure if it's the entire team, but it definitely seems like that with Kevin Durant.
Well, when you think about it, the NBA is a league where the entirety of the league, the history of the league, has been all dynasties and star players being together, whether it be drafted, whether it be trades, whether it be now kind of colluding together amongst friends. So that's always been how championships have been won. It's been a collective of stars and great teams that eventually embark on dynasties. That's just been the history of the league. And almost all of them, the conclusion of that dynasty was drama.
Yeah,
almost every time, whether it be within the team or whether it be they're projecting it outward. But when that's over, whether they win 1, 2, 6 championships, even with the Bulls, there usually is some drama. Something goes on where there's immaturity, there's egos, something with management, even with fans or the opponents. Something happens that wasn't going on when they were winning championships, when they had the cohesive unit. So that's why the conversations are, is this the end of the line? It is surprising to see the Warriors have that drama and have that happen, even knowing Draymond Green's a fiery guy, because he's always projected that to the opponent, which they were fine with when there were suspensions and he was dealing with opponents and jarring with KD when he was on the Thunder, or jarring with players and James Harden on the Rockets now.
Kicking players where you don't want to be kicked.
Right, kicking players, doing the Dennis Rodman thing. But Dennis Rodman, when he was with the Bulls or even the Pistons before, he wasn't telling Isaiah Thomas off. He wasn't telling Michael Jordan off. He was projecting it outward. So it is interesting to see the Dennis Rodman of this dynasty telling the Michael Jordan or the Isaiah Thomas or Scottie Pippen of this, wherever you slice them, off, basically, and putting it towards him. That's interesting.
Well, and this really isn't we have heard rumblings before of stuff that's gone on amongst the Warriors, that Draymond Green early on in Steve Kerr's tenure as the coach almost fought him back, in the locker room after a game, that he almost got into an altercation. Apparently that was fine and nothing came out of it.
Right.
But we heard last year after the finals that a few of the Warriors said, you know, if everyone knew, if the public knew what went on between us this season, you know, they would understand how difficult this really was for them to win that title back to back, the third in 4 years. So I think that the Warriors are smart enough to understand when there's a problem, and will probably just try and figure something out with KD. And if they don't, KD will walk in the summer, and they'll still be good probably.
Well, do you really think that this confrontation, maybe it does, because Kevin Durant, as we were saying before the show off air, Kevin Durant is incredibly sensitive for a superstar. I mean,
too sensitive.
If you tweet him about this after the show, you can tell your friends if they tweet him, he may actually respond. There's a chance he may respond. He may slide in your DMs if they're public.
Well, they said after the game too, a reporter asked him about it, and he said, "Don't do that. I don't want to talk about it." And it's like, well, this was just a really publicized thing, and they seem to have up and made up for it.
And Draymond Green did the same thing though. He gave his little 10-minute rant and speech, and then he didn't want to say anything else. And reporters tried, as we always do, but he wouldn't say anything else. So it seems like there was some directive from the Warriors, whether it be Steve Kerr or whoever else, that that's fine. Yeah, shut it down. We're not going to have any more drama. Even if KD leaves, we're trying to win a championship this year, win 3 in a row, something those franchises and those dynasties hasn't been done since the Lakers. So that we're not going to deal with it right now. We're going to leave it put to bed. But I don't know if this really affects Kevin Durant's decision or not after the year. It seemed like regardless that going into this Warriors tenure, especially after the championships, it never felt like Kevin Durant was a lifelong Warrior for a decade. He was going to stay there. He's going to chase the best deal. There's rumors of him going to play with LeBron in L.A.
Talking about how he wants to get paid finally.
He wants to finally get paid because he is taking a reduction to what his star power will garner to stay with the Warriors. So are some others. Steph's cashing in the money and Kevin Durant's not. That's not going to last forever.
No.
That's going to be the difficulty of keeping this team around. And it is interesting, though, as well, that the Warriors, and of course, Kevin Durant's a superstar, future Hall of Famer. You do have to prioritize him, even though they did win a ring without him. But they sent a message clearly that Draymond, right or wrong, we're blaming you. You did cross the line. You did, kind of go further than Durant did with this. We're suspending you, and we're taking KD's side. I don't know if Draymond knew they had to do that because Kevin Durant's so sensitive, so he's not mad about it. But perception's reality, and it's surprising that could lead to more. If he would pass the ball to Kevin Durant at the end of the game, which this kind of led from, and Durant misses several of those shots, then Draymond could say, now I'm going to pass to Steph. Maybe that's going to be an ego hit for KD, which never was an issue in those finals. They were allowing KD to be the number one. That all could lead to more. Where there's smoke, there could still be fire here.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of know. I think everyone kind of thinks that this is still Steph Curry's team, and they took care of Steph Curry because he was their guy.
But KD was Finals MVP the last 2 years. They were letting KD be the guy. Steph was being unselfish in those finals.
And I think that's the credit to Steph,
right?
Of the type of player that
does
Steph
that
is.
last though?
I don't
because of this drama. If you ask privately, I'm sure Draymond Green feels more of an affinity to Steph than he does to KD
absolutely.
because they won a championship without
Absolutely.
KD. So if he has to pick who he's passing the ball to at the end of the game, especially after this drama, he might throw it to Steph more, and they might quietly say, now Steph's the number one, you're the number two, and Durant might say, I'm not Scottie Pippen, and if that's what you're going to make me, I'm gone, and maybe that creates problems for this year.
And in that game, actually, where this all transpired, Steph Curry was out with an injury. So he kind of had to give it to KD.
That was also like, why are you not passing
exactly.
it to KD?
He ran down the court.
I mean, Clay's there as well.
Yeah,
but
Clay was there, but you look at Clay's expression once Draymond dribbles it off his leg out of bounds, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? So
that's what I'm saying. When Steph is there.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to watch.
There's some pettiness that could be around. I feel like
NBA's a petty league.
It's a petty league. I want pettiness. So
exactly. We pay for the pettiness.
I want Draymond needs to pass it to Steph so much. In the last, if they're ever trailing or if they ever need a closing shot in the last couple minutes.
And moving on to the next topic here, and it kind of, I guess, maybe goes a little bit into pettiness. We have some more news involving Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo out of Houston. The Rockets have decided to release him after just playing 10 games this season. Carmelo Anthony averages 13 points per game, 5 rebounds, shooting 32.8% from 3, 68% from the line. We were all hyped to see Melo play alongside one of his good buddies, Chris Paul, with James Harden.
I was, honestly.
He was traded from the Thunder to the Hawks. They bought out his big contract, which originally was signed with the Knicks, and he signed for the vet min with the Rockets. So not really any kind of financial loss or stipulations for the Rockets to let him go.
Yeah.
But, I think we all kind of expected this to come, where everyone was so excited to see, oh, well, it didn't work out with those two stars, but let's see how Melo can be the third wheel with these two stars.
Right.
The problem with Melo and Melo is a great guy. You hear it from everyone around the league. I don't think anyone thinks this is locker room stuff. I think it is strictly just fit and Melo not being the same player he was even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that, he's on a team where you're going to be asked to.
You could argue this is a worse fit than even the Thunder was.
I would probably agree with that. Yeah. And he's on a team where the Rockets have been given this false kind of label as being a bad defensive team. But it's really only James Harden that's been bad defensively. The rest of the team is very good over the last few years. And you're able to cover up one bad defensive guy, but you can't have two on your team. And that's part of the problem is Melo is just not trying on defense at all and really is not a defensive player at this point anymore in his career. I mean, he's now in, his 16th season. He's not playing defense now. He's trying to win rings. He's trying to score points. So you can't have two guys that are going to play no defense on your team at all. And I think this is a smart move by the Rockets, being proactive to get him out of there and regroup. We all know that Trevor Ariza is just going to be a Rocket again by March because they're going to get bought out by the Suns.
As long as they're enough in the race at that point that it doesn't really handicap them.
Yeah.
If they're coming at it where they're a 7 seed or something in the playoffs, that could be a problem.
Exactly. So I think it's a smart move. And, I mean, if you're Melo, I think you got to hang it up after this because...
Oh, you're hanging it up?
I think he's got to hang it up.
Okay. You're going to sit him down and... Do you think he can be convinced to do that? Because that seems like that's going to be impossible to convince him to do.
I don't think he can be convinced, but I think he'll get the message when I don't think he's going to get much of an opportunity. I mean, it's been about a day since he's getting released by the Rockets, and the only opportunity he's gotten is to play for the Puerto Rican national team.
Which is nice. Maybe he'll do that as a way to save his ego and be a humanitarian, which he has really done a lot for Puerto Rico.
Barea said he is welcome. So
he is welcome.
But that's
there.
kind of the only offer, and you look around the league, and who really wants Melo?
Well, do you believe the media spin off the Kyrie recent comments where he was saying, what do we need with the Celtics? Oh, we need a 14, 15-year veteran that can hit shots. We don't care about defense, that's friends with us. Like, he kind of basically said we need Melo. He fits that bill. Do you think he said he need? That was just odd timing and weird comments to make. He basically described Melo's resume.
You're right. That is very
and they're close
particular.
friends from the Olympic days and the LeBron connection.
Yeah.
So it could very well be that regardless of whether he's a fit there, Kyrie basically could say, well, Melo doesn't want to retire. I'm going to try to get my boy on this roster. Do you think that's what he was doing?
I don't know.
I'd imagine Brad Stevens would tell him we just aren't going to do it.
Yeah, and I think the bigger problem with the Celtics is at this point just having too many mouths to feed. I mean, you have Kyrie, you have Tatum, you have Gordon Hayward now.
Unless the reports from the Rockets are true, though, where obviously Melo wasn't a fit on the court, but he wasn't a problem in the locker room. He was willing to do whatever he had to do. He's willing to come off the bench. He was actually trying to... You would see when he would take a long two, which he made his career out of, and he would laugh and say, "Oh, my bad," in the preseason because he knew that it was supposed to be threes.
Yeah.
It wasn't muscle memory because he never adjusted earlier in his career, which is the problem now. But he's trying more now, even more than he did on the Thunder. If you believe that, maybe a team, especially with a friend of his, would say, "Okay, if you're willing to play 12 minutes." Not late in the game. We won't care about defense. We'll make sure you get 6 to 8 shots a game. And as long as you're making 2 or 3 or 4 of them, which is higher than we was doing in some games with the Rockets, we could give this a shot as long as you're willing to say that we also can drop you, which would be then embarrassing if that happens twice in a year. But if Melo agrees to all that, maybe there could be a shot. There's the Sixers, who we just talked about. They were in rumors as well. There were reports that the Sixers were going to maybe line up for Melo to do the same type of thing because they want more shooters, and maybe Melo could take shots that Ben Simmons can't take if you have somebody else on the court defensively to mask Melo.
Yeah, but when I look around these possible scenarios, because I only think Melo is going to try and play for a winner or a team that has championship.
You would figure, because the Heat have also been brought up, and they were the team that was brought up along with the Rockets before the season. Exactly. But they're just not a contender. That would just he would want to go there to just chuck shots
and to hang out on the beach with Wayne Wade.
Maybe he wants to do that, but yeah,
it doesn't sound like a bad idea. But I don't see him as being that guy right now that can stretch the floor. I mean, and we're only 10 games in the season, but the guy's shooting like under 33% from three. And I just think in Boston, there's far too many mouths to feed. I mean, and they're really crowded at small forward / power forward as well. I mean, you have like 3 guys that are playing small forward all in the starting lineup right now because they just have to get them in there.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a lot of situations where the team...
If you had to make a prediction, then what would you do, though? Because Melo's not going to retire, I would imagine. Would you not be shocked if he announces on Twitter he's retiring?
I don't think I would. I think Melo will get the message after like a few weeks. If he doesn't get any significant offers, I think Melo would get the idea, and maybe he's getting advice from LeBron, D-Wade, his friends, and saying, exit kind of gracefully.
Well, D-Wade made the comment to defend him, though, saying that the Rockets are using him as a scapegoat, and that's not fair, which is true. It does appear the Rockets are using him as a scapegoat, if nothing else.
But he was bad.
He was legitimately bad,
yeah,
but
I mean,
and they are they are playing a lot better with him off the floor. But I don't know if that's a maturation process. Chris Paul did miss some games that Melo was there. There was a couple games, and those are the games that Melo scored 22 and 24 points. That James was gone, Chris Paul was gone. So I guess Melo can play if there's no other star around him. He can do the New York Knicks thing still. That was proven. But he was not a good fit with the Rockets. But defensively, They were all bad. And Trevor Ariza not being there is really the issue because they're losing so much defensively. Capella's not been when he was even last year. They've all played worse. So Melo not being there doesn't seem like this is this miracle solution to the Rockets. You have to remember, they played well against the Warriors last night and won big, but Steph wasn't there. So have they done this to a team fully loaded, which is what they're going to have to do in the playoffs? No. And is there a question of Chris Paul's health? That was brought up last year. They're an older team in terms of their stars. It doesn't seem like Melo is the immediate fix from the Rockets. Their window might have been last year.
No, and I agree. They're going to have to make another move, and that's why I mentioned getting Ariza back or somebody, because they are now a little thinner at small forward / power forward. But I just think that it clearly wasn't a fit. I think when it's all said and done, they made the right decision. Getting rid of Melo.
They did, and it's even better for Melo, which is part of what they were saying, that now if he does want to play, he has a chance to maybe hang out for a month and then have the feelers put out there, maybe get something. Maybe it's even better for him to do more of a second half of the season stretch run, make him a higher gun than have him play a full year. So we'll see.
I think he might call it quits and hang him up.
I would almost be a little sad if that's how he goes out, man.
I agree.
I'm a Melo fan. I know that that's not popular. Nobody's a Melo fan. It's just all Melo jokes on Twitter. But I would have liked to see Melo have this workout. I would have wished the Melo was drafted by the Pistons and could have been a part of that early run. They might have had a longer run of championships. I wish Melo wouldn't have worried so much about getting out of Denver so soon and could have got on the Heat with Dwayne Wade and LeBron.
People don't give the Denver Melo the credit.
He's almost becoming underrated historically now because he's so made fun of the last few years. And the Knicks thing was drama that wasn't all his fault. He didn't have enough of supporting cast there to win a lot. When he was actually in the right mind and they did have stars, he did get the Knicks to the second round on still a weaker cast around him. So I think historically he is becoming underrated now. And that might be what he's thinking. If he retires now, your generation, your age, the younger millennials are never going to give him his proper due. He almost needs to, which is why I hope the Rockets worked out. He needs to land on a team, even if he's a bench player and they win a title or get to the conference finals, that would be better for his legacy than quitting now or going to the Heat and just chucking shots.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And that's my reasoning is I think he's trying to save legacy here at the end. But want to move on to some NCAA before we wrap things up here on the Corner 3 on Pittsburgh Sports Live. As always, want to in the Beaver County Auto
Studios,
of course.
Make a beaver out of you, something that Kongursky says. I'll try to get that one right soon.
So, and of course, we want to remind you to subscribe. Always helps us out here. And moving on to NCAA, I want to talk about the Pitt Panthers. They had a game last night against Central Arkansas. Now 4-0 under Jeff Capel to start his tenure as Pitt's head coach. They won 97-71. Jared Wilson-Frame coming off the bench for the third game this season, his third straight 20-point game. I have to say, and although they haven't played the best competition, I think the best team they've played so far is Troy earlier in the week.
Which is, that's saying something.
It's saying something, but team in the
which may answer the question that was being posed, the rankings, why are they not getting votes for the top 25? Why are they not budging up there? Yeah. Probably the competition.
Exactly. And where they were last year, and they got to kind of prove some stuff here. But I have to say, I've been really impressed with Jeff Capel's team so far early on in this season, and especially just the improvements I've seen from last year have just been athleticism, the defensive intensity, and just the overall, I guess, how effective the offense is, if that makes sense. I mean, this team is getting wide open shots that they weren't able to get last year because they seem to actually have an offensive identity. Jared Wilson-Frame is playing fantastic, and the reason why is because he's not playing the point.
Right.
I mean, he's being able to just spot up for threes, which is his strength, and the guy's shooting like 60% for three, doing that.
They do seem like they're a team now that has guys fitting into the proper role, which was not the case last year.
Yes, and I've really been impressed with the young guards on this team, and I mean, that can kind of pretty much go for anybody because they're all young guards, except for about 3 players that play center. But I have to say, Xavier Johnson, he got a technical and 2 fouls early in that first half last night. Did not have a point, did not record any stats except for those fouls, but had 12, I believe it was 12 points he finished with in the second half of that game and was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, 12 points for Xavier Johnson all in the second half. Trey McGowan's had 3 monster dunks, the third of which was an absolute tomahawk. And I have to say, and I've said this many times, I went periods of time last year, Mike, where I looked at this team and said, I don't know when the last time a player dunked was. Because there was no athleticism. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything beyond themselves in terms of athleticism. They didn't do anything that made you say, wow. But I look at this team now, and we're getting dunks every night. In that first game of the season,
they're fun to watch.
Guys are trying to yam on people. They're actually enjoyable to watch so far, and they're doing great defensively. They're taking care of the basketball on offense. They've made a ton of strides. I know they've only played 4 games, but I'm really excited to see them in not the next game, but the game after, going up against St. Louis, Duquesne coming up after that, and then West Virginia a little bit later. Those are going to be the really big tests for this team, and I'm really excited to see how they perform because from what I've seen so far, this is a team with all the new additions and the new tutelage under Jeff Capel has made incredible strides.
Number one, they're finding their roles. They are coming together. You look at the box scores, a lot of guys in double figures in terms of scoring, 10 points, 12 points, 15. Never really a 25, 30-point game. That's the only concern for, say, a tournament run, whether it be the ACC or the NCAA tournament.
5 guys last night in double figures.
There's not a guy that can carry them through a game that you may be required deep in a season in a conference tournament or an NCAA tournament, but still light years from where they were a year ago. They have a head coach who has a great basketball pedigree and seemingly wants to be there, wants to be at Pitt, wants to be at Pittsburgh. I've seen him preparing for Pittsburgh Sports Live. I've seen him around Market Square getting lunch numerous times. He hangs out with people. He likes being around here, and he's not a Pittsburgh guy, so that's good that he feels that way. Because that hasn't been the thing at Pitt. When they brought in non-Pittsburgh guys, whether it be basketball or football, they haven't liked Pittsburgh. They wanted to step up to a better job. They rushed to get out of there. It's more of a football problem, but still, he likes being around. And number 3 is the fact that they have played so well this year, and that schedule you just brought up, they're winnable games, honestly, even when they get into better competition. Because, I mean, I'm honestly a WVU alum, and watching the Mountaineers so far this year, they've struggled. Yep. They look weaker than they were a year ago. I'm feeling like the news coming out of there throughout this year is Huggins is going to fight somebody, going to hit someone, going to throw a chair. I mean, we're on the risk of his Hall of Fame legacy being ruined if they don't start picking it up. Because he's going to be a ticking time bomb, and that is probably the most vulnerable the Mountaineers will have been in 10 years for Pitt to try to snag.
Even with last year's roster, Pitt played well against them.
They always play well. They always do play well against them. And last year's Mountaineer team was a Sweet 16 team. Yeah. So they played well against that team. WVU does not have a star that can carry a team far either. That's a winnable game. And if you start getting staple wins, if they win that game per se, then they're going to get votes for the top 25. Then they're going to get ranking opportunities. That's what they need to do to really step to the next level. But this is light years from last year, just in a few games in.
Yeah, they've definitely been impressive so far. Like I said, on the defensive side, just getting hands on tip balls and creating havoc for the other team, something they really weren't able to do last season. But they have an identity, they have a plan on offense, and that's what I think it comes down to the most, is they have a plan. Last year was just swing the ball in the perimeter, try to dump it in the post.
It's funny to say there wasn't a plan last year, but yes.
Exactly. Yeah, they literally had no plan on the offensive end. It was, all right, Marcus Carr, pass the ball around for the entire shot clock and try to kick it to Parker Stewart in the corner. And that was really what it was. And now they have an identity. They have these athletic guards that are making plays, that are doing a great job in just their 4th college basketball game.
How do you think they stack up in the conference, though? Because West Virginia's not an ACC team.
In the conference, I think I picked Pitt to finish like 4-12, 5-11 in the conference. Okay. I think they can beat.
I mean, that's a huge jump.
But. Yeah, of course, but I think they can beat teams like Wake Forest, like Georgia Tech, who lost a bunch of players like Josh Okogie, who was their star shooting guard. I mean, I think there is a potential for them to be able to win some games against some of those other bottom tier teams who are bottom tier right now.
Right.
And I think this is a team that is, even though Pitt 2 years ago was able to steal some games from like a UVA and play other big teams tough, like they played UNC tough at one point, I think that this team will be able to steal a game from one of those upper tier teams, and I think maybe they can steal a game against a Syracuse, because I think
who we just saw is vulnerable,
and they don't know how to spell their coach's name.
They don't know how to spell the coach's son's last name.
They spelled Boeheim's son's name.
They're just asking
wrong.
For bad moments.
Yeah, but what I will say is, and this is something I said about Syracuse last year, is Syracuse was a team that was winning a lot of games because just basically on athleticism. Okay, if you're athletic in college basketball, you can win a game or two just based on your athleticism, how long you are.
Yeah.
This
You
Pitt
can.
team has athleticism now. They have length. So I really think they're going to be able to steal some games and win some games that they probably wouldn't have last year, just based on their newfound athleticism, the fact that they have a plan, and the coaching pedigree of Jeff Capel.
Now, they could steal some of those games, win 4 or 5 games in conference, and that doesn't mean they still wouldn't get embarrassed to say North Carolina
Of course.
or a Duke. So the top tier teams could still run them out of the gym, but the ACC is a little bit more wide open this year to win those middle tier games.
Yes.
Against, I mean, maybe even Miami to be competitive in
Miami
in
is
that
really,
respect. And
people think we're going to have a down year this year.
yeah,
as
that
well.
it appears that it's open. That if you're going to have a year where we're building a program and you're trying to do it maybe quicker than others, this maybe is the path to doing so in the ACC. And really, if they lose by less than 20 points to Duke, I feel like they might get some votes and people might be impressed by that.
And this kind of is a perfect segue to our final segment here. And
See, this is
you're
this is
doing
what
a
I'm
hell of
doing.
a job
I know.
with the transitions today. I have to
first
say.
time we're doing a show, and I'm just throwing you transitions.
Now, the Duke Blue Devils, we're talking about the kind of the bottom tier of the ACC. They clearly are the cream of the crop in college basketball. Can anyone beat Duke?
I thought you were about to say in the ACC. Yes, the ACC and beyond.
In college basketball, can anyone beat Duke? They're right now the number 1 team in the country. They absolutely smacked Kentucky in the first game of the season.
Yeah.
They smacked Eastern Michigan, who had like 20 points at halftime. They were
Right.
winning by like 40 at the half. I think that this Duke team has a chance to maybe run the table. I think they're that good.
Coach K is going to want to do that.
Agreed.
That's a legacy thing.
And that's something he's never had the opportunity.
He's never had the opportunity to do it, and he's a legend, obviously, but he's petty in his own right. I feel like that it took him so long to. He criticized Coach Cal for doing the one and done thing. He didn't want to do it. He then now has had to keep up with the Joneses and go ahead and do it because that's the only way to conform to win a championship.
He's done it better.
And he's done it better, and I think he also would love to get an undefeated season because there are some that argue that Coach Cal, for example, has done it well, but has underachieved by doing it with the one national championship and teams losing more games than they should, getting upset at times. I think he would love to say, I did it. I didn't want to do it, but when I did it, I literally had the best one and done season ever.
And I look at this roster, and they got the 3 guys that really stand out. Obviously, Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, Cam Reddish. I think we all kind of universally agree that R.J. Barrett is the best all-around basketball player on this team.
Right.
But Zion Williamson is an absolute monster. And there were reports that came out this week that LSU football coaches, a report came out that they offered him a scholarship to play football as a tight end this week. Because they just saw his highlights. Not this week, but they came out this week. But that they had offered him a scholarship to play tight end because
they need him
saw
now,
his highlights. And they were like, look at him. I mean, the guy is a physical freak. He's heavier than every player in the NBA except one,
Right.
Boban Marjanovic, who's like 7'4".
Right.
I mean, he can dunk. He's got some handles that I didn't expect him to have. I mean, this team just looks dominant and looks like they can run through college basketball this year. I mean, they're going to be tested in the ACC and that grind of a schedule. But so far through 3 games, they've passed with flying colors.
Yeah, it's impossible to say anything else, especially when you start off the year just smacking and shellacking Kentucky, who out of all teams, again, Coach K loves smacking when they can, and you know that Kentucky didn't expect that. They also think they can win a championship this year, even though they're not as fully loaded as, say, Duke. But that game really is where to point to and how impressive Duke is, because Eastern Michigan, other teams, they're lower opponents. But even when my roommate, I was watching him, and I immediately said, "Oh yeah, but it's a lower team," and he was like, "Yeah, but Little Sisters of the Poor, you shouldn't be beating by 45." I mean, they're dominating when they have to. That's how impressive they looked, and they immediately slid into the 1 spot. It's just impossible, though, also, to really be confident in predicting a team at this level to go undefeated. That's just so incredibly hard. You're going to be tested. You're going to have rivalry games. You're going to have teams getting up for you where you're maybe down. Yep. You're going to have the games that are closer together you only have maybe one day off or even maybe playing a back-to-back. You're going to have to travel. You're going to have young players that aren't used to this schedule. There could even be, and Coach K doesn't usually have this, but egos, dramas. The media is going to surround Duke more than other programs. That's just so hard to say. But if any team has a chance, it is Duke right now. And there are The ACC, like Pitt, could take advantage of getting to the middle of the pack. Duke could take advantage of the conference and go undefeated because North Carolina's weaker than they've been as well. They haven't looked impressive from what I've seen of them.
Syracuse's still down.
I mean, who's beating Duke? These other teams have looked worse, and Duke has looked better. The recipe for that is Duke should win.
Yeah, and I think it's entirely possible that they can go undefeated. And
I mean, if they lose more than 4 games, though, it's almost like that's an incredible disappointment.
It is. It really is. And it's kind of hard to believe that thinking that right now that it would be. But you look at the way they've played, you look at all that talent, and they're incredible. I mean, they're outscoring opponents by 31 points a game.
But number 1 overall seeds have not won every recent championship, have not always made Final Fours, and Coach K even himself has had teams that are number 1 seeds that lose early, lose in the second round of the NCAA tournament, regardless of the ACC tournament. So there is no guarantee, and Coach K knows that better than anybody else. A lot of Duke players he always has come in there can tell him that better than anybody else. So there's no guarantee to any of this, but they really, really look good. I mean, is Zion the number 1 overall pick when he comes out? Is he gearing up to be the number? He seems to be the NBA pick, even though maybe not the best overall player.
It's going to be him or RJ Barrett, but Zion just seems to have so much upside, and he's a physical freak. All that potential,
and he has the NBA body.
He's got the NBA body. He's got an NFL body. If we're being honest.
He does. I mean, maybe he could do it. The only thing LeBron did not accomplish in his career is actually trying to play high-level football as well, that he always thought he could be a tight end for, say, the Browns. Maybe Zion will actually do that.
We'll see.
Could we have a Deion Sanders playing NBA and NFL?
Because if it ends up being the Cavaliers that are the worst team in the league and end up getting the first pick maybe and draft him, I mean, the Browns could probably use him. I think Baker Mayfield would like to throw to Zion Williamson.
It might be some immediate success more than what the Cavs would have with him, because Zion is a great physical specimen, but the only difference of the comparison throwing out is he the next LeBron. He still doesn't feel like a player that's going to walk in the door and immediately make you a contender.
No. Like
LeBron kind of did for the Cavaliers. They weren't a playoff team right away, but they were immediately relevant and were close to the playoffs. That's still not what Zion's doing. But he's still very young, and he is the best coach you could ask for. Which, is that another segue? The best coach you could ask for to get him to that level.
Well, I think we're going to kind of save that for next week. I think we're running out of time.
Do a little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, some foreshadowing of maybe an upcoming topic. But that's going to be it for us today here on the Corner 3 on Pittsburgh Sports Live in the Beaver County Auto Studios. Mike, I thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem, man. Happy to help out the venture here at Pittsburgh Sports Live, everything we're doing. Want to make sure to click subscribe. Say it there on the screen. They click subscribe to the YouTube channel. It makes it so if you're annoyed by the tweets and you're annoyed by us barraging you with promotion, we don't have to do that if you click subscribe. So if you click subscribe, you'll get the notification, and then we don't have to bother you anymore. Click subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us all over the place, whether it be the websites, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now with Kongursky's venture, Pittsburgh Sports Now that has game recaps, Alan Saunders covering these Pitt games. So what we're talking about now, you can find Jeff Capel's take, you can find Xavier Johnson's take, you can find Alan Saunders' take and his game recaps, all on Pittsburgh Sports Now, and also pghsportslive.com, which is where all this golden quality content lives, and everything you can get everywhere else, you can also get there.
I feel like you've done that more than a few times.
I have that script memorized. You can also find us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Yes, I have that. I have that up here. I've done a few shows for the PCL venture so far, so yes, it's memorized.
You can find me on Twitter at Cale_Berger.
At Mike Asti 11 on Twitter.
Once again, this has been the Corner 3 on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We thank you for tuning in, and we will be back next week.